In 1969, when she was a teenager living happily with her Navy family, Barbara Browning was exposed to radiation and chemicals on Naval Station Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay in a townhouse apartment numbered 1102A in HALYBURTON Court. Her townhouse sat in what later became half of a toxic dump and cleanup zone the Navy called HALYBURTON-BIGELOW Court Solid Waste Disposal Area. She and her family and friends suffered illnesses and early deaths from exposure to radiation and chemicals on Treasure Island. At the end of this video, Barbara tells her whole story on behalf of her friends who died not knowing they were exposed.
I'm not expecting anything. I did this to my friends that are gone, that do not have the ability to speak up against such injustices. They should have told us we were exposed so we could have been more proactive with our health.
In the late 1980s, 20 years after Barbara Browning's family lived on Treasure Island, Congress decided naval bases were too expensive and began shutting them down. At that time, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, mandated cleanup of the toxins. The U.S. Navy's remediation of radiation and chemicals from Treasure Island began 27 years ago in 1999 and continues to this day. Early in 2014, on Thursday, February 27, Treasure Island resident Catherine Lundgren introduced me to the HALYBURTON-BIGELOW Court Solid Waste Disposal Area, otherwise known as a toxic dump. Later on in the summer, on Friday, July 18, 2014, another Treasure Island resident, Margaret Billsborough, and I videoed both Bigelow and HALYBURTON courts in the same place where Catherine Lundgren and I had been standing on February 17. And finally, 4 months later, on Saturday, November 8, 2014, Navy official Keith Foreman conducted a tour to the HALYBURTON-BIGELOW cleanup site and described the toxins the Navy was removing. The 3 visits to the HALYBURTON-BIGELOW Court cleanup zone in March, July, and November 2014 will follow in that order. That was the order in which I came to understand what the Navy was doing at HALYBURTON-BIGELOW Court. Begin the 3-part tour here. On Thursday, February 27, 2014, Catherine Lundgren introduced me to the HALYBURTON-BIGELOW Court Solid Waste Disposal Area Toxic Dump.
What is this?
So this is the HALYBURTON Court area that was in question, and in fact in the Channel 2 investigative report, they mentioned this as being one of the hottest spots on the island. And so they never used it to house anyone because it was just that unsafe. Meanwhile,
what used to be back here?
Well, the homes of military families. So military families actually did live here. None of the civilian families were housed back here.
So what made it a hot spot, and why were military families living on it?
There were readings that were so exceptionally high that they couldn't put people in these units.
But military families had lived here prior to that?
Yes.
When were the readings done? Do you know the year?
I don't know the year per se, but again, it has been investigated, it has been reported on repeatedly. This is HALYBURTON. This is also where squatters come and live because they can get in here and not be seen, not be identified. But now they're tearing these down, which, you know, at times we haven't always had this green dust fencing. So this is another issue. They put it up, but the wind just kicks it up or tears it down, or, you know, so this is...
And Catherine and the people out here know that toxic material, radiological material, gets carried in the dust.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that it isn't just a matter of particulate matter, it's a matter of radioactive particulate matter. Is that correct?
Right. And even though they swear that the trucks are covered, they're just a tarp over the top. So these trucks are coming out the other side down Gateview Avenue, which is the main road for everyone. So, you know, one slip up, one piece, you know, again, we're back to it only takes one atom, and that atom never disappears.
Right.
So
you know, up here on the other side of this fence, I saw an earth digger, if I can get up there again.
Right.
And you're saying that trucks, raise the volume here, trucks
Yeah.
come out of here covered, full of dust all the time?
Right.
And are they covered, Catherine?
No, they're supposed to be covered on their way out, but they're uncovered on their way back in, and they dump it on the eastern side of the island.
I'm looking for the earth mover. I haven't quite got it in the camera yet. It's going to turn, there it is. It's going to turn up in the footage, but I can't really see it right now.
And then I have footage that I can deliver to you of them mowing the lawns back here before they started dismantling this and kicking up the dust and cutting down trees and using those wood chips for mulch and other in front of our units. So they're actually taking the crap and the vegetation that they cut down and carry it back in front of our homes. So it's not a matter of them doing it and being careful. They're not careful. They're not careful at all. And when I brought that up to them and showed them the footage, then they put this new green. This is new.
Oh, they put this so that people couldn't see back in here, but it won't do much dust mitigation, will it?
Right.
I want to make sure I get that.
So this is
walk over and thank you. I want to get that earth mover in there.
This stuff is pretty flippy here.
Yeah. Yeah, really. It is flippy. Now I'm not sure I got it before.
Well, and
Do
then,
you want to see if you can find it in the viewfinder? Raise it up and then turn it down like that. Maybe you can get it.
Sure. It's right there. And if you'll notice, you can see all of the flooding. The flooding that brings up the groundwater that's contaminated.
Where do you see the flooding? Where do you see the flooding?
Right in there. There's a pond.
In the field.
Yep, right on the edge of the old concrete court. And then...
I can sort of see pools of water through this mesh. Is that what you're...
Yeah, and there's a reflection of it in there. And so basically, there's one right there. Back over there. Yeah.
And so what happens? Explain again. What happens when the water?
Oh, the king tide.
No, wait. No. What were you saying a minute ago happens with these pools?
Well, look at this.
Okay, I want to show Catherine's feet. I'm just asking her the significance. So it's all moist down in here.
Yeah, look at this.
Oh, it's just gushy. It's
and
mushy.
You know, this is bringing up whatever's underneath into our children's feet, into my feet. So, you know, the cones are wet from sitting in it. So it's obviously, you know, a problem that the water table doesn't stay far enough down to where it can't affect us.
Because this island is in the middle of a bay and is sinking a foot a year, and the water from the bay pushes the water table up through the soil. Is that correct?
Right.
5 months later, on Friday, July 18, 2014, Margaret Billsborough and I videoed both Bigelow and Halliburton courts in the same place where Catherine Lundgren and I had been standing in February. Bigelow Court was, and still is, separated from Halliburton Court by 13th Street. Both Catherine and Margaret were mothers who were concerned about their kids. As Margaret walked toward the fence, she videoed 1102 Halliburton Court, the townhouse where Barbara Browning had lived 45 years earlier.
So this is that site where they are doing a lot of construction that has just started. I'm going to walk over there, and you can see there's people over there now, and they have hard hats on. and they have hazmat suits on, covering their bodies. So if I can just get up here a little bit, I'm gonna walk over here so that you can see over there what they're doing.
This is 13th Street. 13th Street is the dividing line between Halliburton and Bigelow Court.
And this is all that side. There's a guy with a blue hazmat on and one with a white one. They're walking. And you can see over here all the cement that they tore up, and that these trucks, I don't know where they're putting it. So they're covering this right now. As we speak, they're trying to cover the dirt. Just wanted to sit there for a while and watch them, what they're doing. There has to be a purpose of that.
During the Navy's van trip, Keith Foreman explains, the men in hazmat suits are laying plastic sheets called visqueen on the ground to use for dumping and measuring toxic dirt. Later in this video, Keith Foreman will ask,
can you see the little screening areas with the sandbags and the visqueen, that's the black plastic?
Margaret does not know that the men are weighting down the black plastic sheets with white sandbags. She's come to the reasonable conclusion that they're covering the dirt.
All right, let me get back. Over here. Oh, there's a few more guys over there. Okay. And I'll just walk this way. And there's the portables from the school. There's the elementary school. And I'm walking in the back by Bigelow Court.
This is actually Halliburton Court. This school is quite important. Barbara Browning attended this school in 1969. Catherine's and Margaret's children attended this school in 2014. This school sits mere feet from a radiologically and chemically contaminated cleanup zone. This school is still in use today. This former school building contains a restaurant and a church.
And this is all the cement that they've dug up. I'm going to get really close up here. So that you can see all the cement that they're pulling up. And this is all the site that's going on. Alright. And you can see some of them dump trucks back there that have been carrying, almost fell, that have been carrying stuff off the island or bringing it on. I'm not quite sure.
The chopped up cement blocks were either radioactive pads from under the townhouses or the Navy was storing radioactive cement from other places. They wouldn't say.
You just go back this way and get back to Barbara. Now this building right here was the very first site of the Boys and Girls Club. Back in 2000, 2001, 2003. I don't see an address on it, but it is in the back of the school here. This is the elementary school. And we're standing in the schoolyard. Just go around a little bit. I was just saying that this was the very first site of the Boys and Girls Club. These two buildings right here.
Okay.
The fence around this radioactive and chemically contaminated cleanup zone stood feet from a functioning former Navy elementary school that in 2014 housed a Boys and Girls Club. Margaret was a mother whose children attended the school and took part in the Boys and Girls Club. As the child in a Navy family in 1969, Barbara Browning lived in Townhouse 1102A, Halliburton Court. She attended this elementary school, which she could see from her bedroom window.
May I?
Yeah.
All right, I think that there's going to be some parts of this where the wind will have interfered with what you were saying, because this wind is really strong coming off here. But I see you got up over this whole fence, because I watched you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see them back there. They're covering the dirt.
Listen, do you mind standing up on this bench and just panning slowly across that whole site and getting the whole thing in the camera?
Yeah, you can't see. You cannot see.
Wait, do it on camera. Do the whole thing on camera.
You can't really see
Your voice close to
the site. You can't really see the site because of the cement that's here. So we're on the other side of where I just filmed, where they were covering the dirt and have the hazmat suits on. Now here's I guess a water truck.
I want to get this sign while we are here, because if you look at this, these signs mean this site is radioactive. You want to say that? They mean what?
They mean radioactive area. When it says restricted area, this sign right here, this symbol is a symbol for radiation.
Thank you. And notice controlled area. Controlled area. That also suggests, in its position next to the radiation sign, it says this place is radioactive, essentially.
The tiny sentence at the bottom of the blue sign on the left says, controlled for radiation protection purposes.
Okay.
So, and as you can see, as I videotaped, everybody over there has hazmat suits on.
Everyone,
Protecting their body, yes.
everyone in the video, I'm saying this again loud.
Yes.
Everyone in this video has hazmat suits on because it's radioactive over there.
And finally, 4 months later, on Saturday, November 8, 2014, Navy official Keith Foreman conducted a tour to the Halliburton-Bigelow cleanup site and described the toxins the Navy was removing. Foreman omitted and distorted a lot of information.
We have another solid waste disposal area that is not along the perimeter, that is not along the coastline, and it's in the Bigelow Court area. So Bigelow Court and Halliburton Court are two areas internal, and we're going to go there to see them now. Halliburton Court completed. It was a storage area for electrical transformers, and those transformers over time leaked while the Navy was here, and they leaked PCBs and oils into the soil. So we did major soil removals in that area. Bigelow Court has other contaminants, namely lead and some PCBs. PCBs aren't at high level, but they're high enough where we have to dig them out. And then some elevated lead. But it also had 3 radiological objects that we found. And we'll be going to Flounder Court because that's really the best view of Bigelow Court when you're at bus level here. At least it was yesterday. We were able to get a really good view of what we've done. So what we did there is we demolished 2 buildings, 1101 and 1103, and you'll see that.
This Navy photo shows a tech holding a Geiger counter measuring radiation beneath the floor of apartment 1101B Bigelow Court. The U.S. Navy contracted Don Wadsworth's company, New World Environmental, to survey for radiation. NBC reporter Vicki Wynn embedded this photo taken by a U.S. Navy photographer of a technician squatting over a Geiger counter on the floor of 1101B Bigelow Court. The caption said, "Technician evaluating elevated radiation detected beneath the slab of B1101, 80,000 CPM and at 30 UR an hour on contact with floor." The reading, 80,000 CPM and 30 UR an hour, is a measurement of how much energy the radioisotope is releasing and the speed at which its atoms in a steady stream are striking the DNA of a person's body. In this case, at a frequency of 1,000,000 times over the Environmental Protection Agency's limits for the human ability to tolerate such impact without damage. Asked, should people be living on Treasure Island? Don Wadsworth said simply, no.
We did pretty massive digs across the site to get the contaminants, and then we did confirmation sampling to make sure that we were leaving a clean site, and that is in the hands now, or will be shortly, of the regulators in a report. The Navy believes we pretty much finished cleanup at Bigelow Port, which is a good thing. But now we need to get with the regulators and see what they'll examine the data, and we'll see what happens. But again, this is an example of the process does come to an end. There is actual cleanup on sites, and then they eventually get closed. All right, so we're about to go into Flounder Court, which is a cul-de-sac. So we won't have to go into reverse here. And then Darius, if you could just, as closely as you can sort of align the bus parallel to the green fences.
Margaret Billsborough, who we encountered earlier in this video, lived at 1409 C Flounder Court.
Right now.
All right, so we're coming up on Flounder Court. Now we're in the midst of 1400 series housing, which is the last housing that was built. This area we did intensive, at various depths, intensive soil sampling, looking for radiation. We didn't find any in the 1400 series. We're still working with the regulators on that, though, because there will be more work to do before we can close out this section. This has a slightly different, this part of the base has a slightly different history than the rest of the neighborhoods. It was, of course, built last. And there were existing buildings here since the Golden Gate International Exposition, the World's Fair, that is. That meant that the grading of this area would be different than the grading for the other housing areas. Okay, doesn't it look a little bit like an archaeological dig, if you can see that? Can you see that? The hole there? Okay, now eventually, again, what I said, what's going to happen eventually? The hole's going to be filled in, right? We have to compact it and fill it in with our soil pile. Okay, and you can see the foundations there. Now you can also see we've set up some screening areas. Can you see the little screening areas with the sandbags and the visqueen, that's the black plastic? Okay, those are going to be screening areas we're going to use in the future. We have limited real estate on the island, and we have to find a very compact, efficient way of screening soil. So when we start digging up the Sweetas, part of the soil from the Sweetas are going to be screened right here. And that's going to be its use, you know, about first, second quarter of 2015.
What is that word?
Sweeta, I'm sorry, solid waste disposal area.
I see some new graffiti.
Again, that's, call me on it when I start heading into acronyms. I don't like to do that.
Where?
Okay,
Shrews.
so that's what this area is. So we found 3 radiological objects, one of them under a foundation, 2 of them close to the foundation. And we found lead and PCBs. And we had to do a lot of digging to finish that.
There it is.
This is an interesting thing that's sort of a misnomer. It's called the solid waste disposal area, This area was relatively clean of debris. There was almost no debris at all. So amongst ourselves on the team, we call it Sweet Light, because it really was a solid waste disposal area with not much solid waste in it. But it did have some contaminants in some limited areas that we had to chase. But it didn't have a whole lot of debris. And we may have to do a little 3-point turn here. I think Darius is having to 5-point turn. No.
On Monday, February 8, 2021, Barbara Browning, the former child of a Navy family living at 1102 Halliburton Court in 1969, phoned in testimony about her multiple illnesses to a hearing on Treasure Island toxicity at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Land Use and Transportation Committee. This is Barbara Browning's testimony.
Hello, my name is Barbara Browning. My family moved to Treasure Island in 1969. At that time, I was 9 years old. We lived on the island until February of 1977. We lived at 1102A 13th Street, which is Halliburton Court. Our apartment was the closest to the grade school. While living on the island, I saw the Navy dermatologist who prescribed me the highest dose of tetracycline. The year that we moved away, I was 16 and had a horrible complexion. I had been treated by the military clinic with the maximum dose of tetracycline for at least 3 years before we left the island. After moving to Muskogee, Oklahoma, I saw my father's local doctor, and he informed me that I was at the maximum dose and that it was too high for somebody who had a complexion problem. And at the same time, I was diagnosed with ulcers. At this time, I was 17 years old, my junior year of high school. I was eating baby food for lunch. And at the time, they said the ulcers were due to stress moving from San Francisco to Muskogee, Oklahoma. Now science says that stress does not cause ulcers. In 1980, I had my first surgery to move a lump out of my breast. The doctors told us I caught it in time, and had they ignored it, the story would have been different. I was about 19, 20 years old at the time. In 1989, my appendix burst and had to be removed. In 1991, I had knee surgery. In 1995, at 35 years old, all my reproductive organs had to be removed. My mother was the same age, 35 years old, when she had to have the complete hysterectomy in the 70s. I was 35 in 1985 and had to endure the same surgery. We had tumors in our ovaries. Mine were the size of oranges. My mother was the size of grapefruit. My daughter is 37, and her tumor is in her uterus instead of her ovaries. It's the same size as a grapefruit, but because of the location of the tumor, it will be handled differently at this time. She is keeping her reproductive organs. My mother worked at the daycare center on Treasure Island. She was one of the first employees at that location. She is like me with many health issues. After my reproductive organs were removed in 2013, things got really interesting. I became allergic to foods for the first time. First it was avocados, then tree nuts, then strawberries, grapes, garlic, pineapple, corn, and the list was growing. I was never allergic to food before this, but suddenly I was having problems. In 2014, they removed pre-cancer sores in my mouth and throat. In 2015, more surgery to remove precancers in my mouth, and this time they found one near my optic nerve. In 2016, I had to have heel spur surgery. In 2017, my gallbladder quit working, so I had to endure another surgery to have it removed. In October 2019, I had a major surgery to fix a hole in my colon. After fixing the hole in my colon, finally my allergies went away. But I'm told that my allergies might come back, so I have to keep an EpiPen to administer a dose of epinephrine handy just in case it happens. With each of these surgeries, the doctors have said to me this only happens to 1% of the population. Since my first time writing this list, more issues have surfaced. I can also add knee surgery. For the first time I was 31. The doctors called it hairy knees. But recently I had to have the same surgery at 65, and it was better explained that for some reason my bones were shrinking and leaving jagged edges that destroyed the soft tissues such as ligaments and tendons. It's normal for someone at 65 to have the surgery, but not at 31 years old. My ears, nose, and throat specialist asked me a few questions. She told me that very recently she had met a person who had the same medical issues that I have. She asked the person, by any chance, did you grow up on a nuclear waste dump? And the woman told her simply, yes, Chernobyl. My doctor talked to me more about where I lived, and she has since been documenting my progress. I have follow-ups with her every 6 months. I have been told that my next major issue will be a type of arthritis. I already have it in my hips. At the time, I truly did not know Treasure Island was so toxic. It wasn't until my 20th class reunion that my eyes were really open. Did I mention I belonged to 2 different high schools? One was in San Francisco, the other is in Muskogee, Oklahoma. I went to my first class reunion in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and the only people that had passed away out of the class of approximately 550 were from stuff like car wrecks and suicide. The Treasure Island reunion never happened. Over half my friends were already dead from cancers, and every family I had spoken to had been dealing with some form of cancer. My brothers did not suffer the same way as I and my parents had suffered. I suspect it's because they did not go to school on the island like I did, and they loved to play on YBI. They also did not start puberty until they left the island. My middle brother has had his gallbladder removed. My youngest brother hates doctors, but he is in fairly good health, except he has been dealing with arthritis. My mother had reproductive issues. My father had digestive issues. I got both, reproductive and digestive issues. My father is a pancreatic cancer survivor. My mother is one of 10 siblings. 3 of her siblings would come and visit us regularly. My Aunt Christine, she died of breast cancer. My Aunt Loretta also died of cancer. Then my Aunt Mona. My Aunt Mona stayed with us the longest. She has had the same reproductive issues and gallbladder issues. And I do think it was breast cancer that she has also been fighting. She had many health issues just like my mother and myself. My Aunt Mona was fortunate, though. She had great doctors and medical insurance. The other siblings are cancer-free at this time. Our unit was the one closest to the school. I could see the courtyard from my school out my bedroom window. From the same window, I can see the jail and the prison and the prisoners exercising in the yard. The school was used for many things such as father-daughter dances, square dancing lessons, and it had different places to play, such as basketball and tetherball courts. Summer art programs were also held at this location. As kids, we were all over the base. On Halloween, we trick-or-treated every door in the housing units. We played in the playground. We dug in the dirt. We climbed on the rip-rap rocks that encircled the island. And yes, we entered restricted areas. We were kids. Someone asked me, what do I want? I want the record to show that I tried to warn people of the dangers of living on such a beautiful, toxic environment. The public hearing on Treasure Island toxicity was held on February 8, 2022 by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. I am totally insulted, angry, that after I testified, my words were changed in the transcripts. I do not have sores on my PUSSY. And no time did I say so. I'm not expecting anything. I did this to my friends that are gone, that do not have the ability to speak up against such injustices. They should have told us we were exposed so we could have been more proactive with our health. Maybe it was the tetracycline that was able to combat the radiation and the chemicals, and that's why I'm still alive. And if so, more people need to know. I'm very fortunate I have medical insurance and that my doctors have not dismissed my illnesses like they did with my friends. But many of my friends who are now gone are not so fortunate, and for them I speak up about what has gone so wrong. Thank you for your time.